Hi, children. Welcome back again to our history class. We are learning about the second chapter in history part, that is Socialism in Europe and the Russian Revolution. Under this title, in the last video, you have learned about the views of liberals, radicals, and conservatives. So, about these three groups and their views, you have learnt about their views in the last video. And now in this video, let us discuss some more important topics today. The title of our lesson is Socialism in Europe and the Russian Revolution. Industrial society and social change. During Industrial Revolution, do you know where did the Industrial Revolution break out? The Industrial Revolution took place in Britain, in Great Britain, some 1760. So in the beginning of the 18th century, the Industrial Revolution started in England. So during Industrial Revolution, what happened? New cities and industrial regions and the new railway lines developed. And besides this, many new industries sprang up in Europe, not only in Britain, but also in Europe. So many industries grew up. So a lot of changes took place in Europe as a result of this industrial revolution that started in Britain. So new cities sprang up, new industrial regions came up, and new railway lines developed. So these are the outcomes of the industrial revolution that took place in England. And not only that, the industrial revolution brought men, women, and children to factories. Since so many factories sprang up or grew up, this industrial revolution brought men, women, and children to factories. So many people for their livelihood have joined in the factories, even the small children. You see in the picture, you can see how the small children were working there in the factory at hazardous conditions. Yes, they worked in factories. So industrial revolution brought men, women, and children to factories. But while they were working, the working hours were too long and their wages were very meager. They were very small and poor. The wages were very poor and meager, but working hours were too long. Even the small children had to walk in that hazardous conditions for more than 15 hours sometimes. So such were the conditions prevailed there in Britain and in Europe, okay, as a result of the industrial revolution. So industrial revolution brought women, men, and children to factories, but whereas their working conditions were so miserable, they were very miserable, very pitiable, because there were no proper salaries, there were no good wages for them, but they had to work long hours in the factory. So these are the conditions that prevailed in Britain and in Europe also during industrial revolution. Then liberals and radicals searched for solution to these issues. What were the issues there? Their salaries were so meager, the working conditions were not good. So under these conditions, the workers were working in the factories. So the liberals and radicals, already we studied and learnt about the views of radicals and liberals in the previous video. So here the liberals and radicals in Europe searched for solution to these problems, to the problems of these workers. regarding their salaries and working conditions. So they were looking and searching for solution to these issues. And in France, Italy and Germany, and also in Russia, many nationalists became revolutionaries. Nationalists turned into revolutionaries. Once they were nationalists who loved their nations, but these nationalists ultimately became as revolutionaries. And then they worked to overthrow, to topple, and to overthrow existing monarchs. Already in the French Revolution, you have learnt about the monarchs and their rule. So the monarchs enjoyed the absolute powers and considered themselves as the representatives of God, and they were the strong believers of divine rights theory. Yesterday, in the last video, I told you divine rights. They believed, the monarchs in Europe had strongly believed in divine rights. So they considered themselves as the representative of God on earth. So they enjoyed all the absolute powers. The monarchs enjoyed the autocratic powers. They maintained autocracy. They ruled in an autocratic way. So that is why the people were fed up with these autocrats or monarchs in Europe. That's why. Particularly here, the liberals and radicals turned against them. And now they wanted to overthrow such monarchs or governments in Europe. So liberals and radicals, particularly, and besides that, the revolutionaries. Besides them, the revolutionaries, all the revolutionaries in Europe wanted to overthrow existing monarchs or the governments, existing monarchical governments in Europe, my dears. Now, let me tell you how the socialism came to Europe, the coming of socialism in Europe. By the mid-19th century in Europe, socialism was a well-known body of ideas that attracted the attention of the people. In the previous video, I told you about the pioneers of socialism, especially Karl Marx and Engels, the famous socialists, and they are the pioneers of socialism. And they were they created scientific socialism. Scientific socialism was prepared by Karl Marx. So these these socialist ideas became very popular in Europe. That's why, since the principles, the socialist principles were good, so many people, millions of people got attracted to these socialist ideas and became the followers of Karl Marx and Engels. So by the mid-19th century here in Europe, socialism was a well-known body of ideas that attracted attention of the masses, people, especially the working mass, the working people, the working laborers, proletariat society got attracted to these ideas, socialist ideas. So socialists were against private property. Mainly the socialists, the followers of socialism, the ardent followers of socialism, mainly stood against private property. They didn't like private property. Socialists were against the private property and saw it as the root cause of all the social evils in the society. They considered that it is the private property was the root cause of all the social evils, my dear children. So we know very well about the economic equality. All the economic equality, all the disparities in the society. Yes, here it was the private property that was responsible for all these anomalies or inequalities or disparities in the society. So socialists strongly believed that private property was the root cause for all the social evils. That's why they stood against the private property. They didn't like private property. All the property should belong to the people, and that property should be distributed among all the masses, among all the people in the society. So therefore, the socialists stand against private property and saw it as the root cause of all social evils, all the economic inequalities. Yes. That's why they wanted to root out all this private property. And later, Robert Owen, one of the famous socialists, Robert Owen, a leading English manufacturer, demanded to build a cooperative community called New Harmony in Indiana, USA. And Robert Owen, Saint Simon, Louis Blanc, all these are the famous socialist ideas. So Robert Owen, he was a British socialist and manufacturer who demanded to build a cooperative community called New Harmony in Indiana. And besides Robert Owen, other important socialist leaders by name Louis Blanc. French socialist Louis Blanc also wanted government to encourage cooperatives and replace capitalist enterprises because they worked against the capitalist enterprises. They worked against private property. So these cooperatives were to be associations of people. The cooperatives were the associations. They were to be associations of the people. These cooperatives were to be associations of people who produced goods together and divided the profits according to the work done by the members. So community associations were formed, and the members who worked in that. So when the profits came, those profits were divided among those members who worked. So these are the cooperatives which were supported by Robert Owen and Louis Blanc. And these two socialists strongly supported these cooperatives. And support for socialism. By the 1870s, socialist ideas spread through Europe, my dears. And to coordinate their efforts, socialists formed an international body called Second International. Second International was formed. All the socialists came together and formed an organization that was called Second International. It was called a Second International. By the 1870s, socialist ideas spread through Europe, and to coordinate their efforts, socialists formed an international body, an organization which was called Second International. And through this Second International, the socialists worked against capitalists because they oppose capitalism. So that's why they worked against the capitalists, and they wanted to popularize socialist ideals in Europe. Now workers in England and Germany formed associations to fight for better living and working conditions. England and Germany, already I told you, even small children and women worked in factories at hazardous conditions and situations, and their salaries were so meager. So now the socialists wanted to reform these conditions. So that's why workers in England and Germany formed associations to fight for better living and working conditions. They were fighting, for better living and working conditions of these working masses. By 1905, socialists and trade unionists formed Labour Party in Britain. Likewise, a socialist party was also set up in France. Through the Labour Party and Socialist Party, the socialist leaders or the working class people particularly fought against the capitals, and they fought for better wages and better conditions in Europe, my dears. So here the parties such as Labour Party and Socialist Party played a very important role here. And till 1914, socialists never succeeded in forming a government in Europe. Even though all these socialist leaders and the activists worked hard to bring about a socialist government in Europe, they failed miserably till 1914. Even though they organized agitations in several parts of Europe, they failed miserably till 1914. They never succeeded in forming a government, a socialistic government in Europe, and that came true, in Russia in the year 1917. In the coming videos, I will tell you how the socialistic government formed in Europe. Okay, my dear children. So till then, keep on watching. And if you have any doubts, just call upon. Okay. Thank you, my dear children, for watching this video.